So I want to be a little transparent with you this morning. I just want to give you my personal thoughts on the state of church when I've been a part of it, and only me. So I don't want to speak for you. I just want to speak out of my own experience. So there was a long period of time in my life, an extremely long period of time in my life, where I thought there was a sequence to being a follower of Jesus. Now, this might, like I said, this might not be you. This is just what I perceived. It's what I perceived was happening in the places around me, the places of faith that I was working as I was a pastor for 14 years before we planted here. And it's just things that I've kind of gathered along the way. And this is what I believed, right? This is what I believed. And that's this. Here's our sequence. You must first behave. Second, you believe. And then you belong. That's what I thought. That's what I was taught. That's what I learned. That you must first behave. That if you want to be a part of a church, of a family of God, of a community of church folks, you had to first act like them, talk like them, think like them. And once you behaved in a certain way, then they allowed you to come in. I would allow people to come in to begin to study the Bible, so hopefully they would begin to believe like the rest of us. And then, if they passed those two tests, we'd say, welcome to the club. You now belong here. You had to behave, then you believed, and then you belonged. When you walked in today, you saw a different slide on our screen. One that just simply says, you belong here. And so maybe you're thinking, well, hold on. Did I skip the first two? Do I get a pass on those first two? Like, so you're saying, or is it just like lip service? Is it like, hey, that's your catchy little slogan that you put on everything and it looks nice and neat, and maybe that's what you believe, or maybe it's just, like I said, it's the nice catchy thing. Because you're missing the believe, you're missing the behave, you skip straight to belonging. I understand. It's a fundamentally different approach. Fundamentally different. But I will tell you this. It hasn't always been a fundamentally different approach. In fact, it was Jesus' approach. And somewhere along the way, Christians just like me started to ignore the way of Jesus and started to come up with something that we created that better fit our lifestyle and our thought process in the clubs we wanted to belong to. When we look into the Bible, there's a place in the book of Luke, chapter 19, where there's a story that takes place. There's a guy by the name of Zacchaeus. Zacchaeus is a tax collector. And in this day, if you're not familiar with biblical kind of history and what's happening in the first century, what would happen is the Roman occupation, they would get people that were local people, and then they would go into them and they would say, hey, what we want you to do is collect taxes from the people that you live with, that you work and play, and that you experience life with. We want you to be the tax collector, and which is fine. Like, hey, that's cool. I've got a government job, right? Maybe it comes with great benefits. This one came with incredible benefits, right? You think Congress has got good benefits? No. This tax collecting thing, it was as good as it gets, right? And so you could collect your taxes, but then anything you collected over that, you got to pocket, right? So you had to pay the tax bill, but anything at all you could convince them to give you belonged to you. And so tax collectors became just hated, disliked. They were thieves. They were dishonest. They were stealing from their own people. Right? Zacchaeus is one of these guys. Jesus is coming to his town, and Zacchaeus hears about Jesus. He wants to see him. And so Zacchaeus, he's, you know the song, what is he? Boom. Why am I even talking about this? You got it, we're done. Now, Zacchaeus was a wee little man, you know what I'm saying? And so he climbed up in a sycamore fig tree. And he climbs up there because he's waiting for Jesus to come by. And when he sees him, he's like, man, I got the greatest view. I got a good seat in the house, right? And so as he's coming by, Jesus is walking, and I don't know if he's Instagramming or storying or live. I'm not sure what Zacchaeus is doing, but he's like taking this all in, like, here comes Jesus. Jesus stops. He stops. And his eyes, they kind of move from the ground in front of him where he's walking, and Jesus looks at him. And they connect. Arguably the most hated man within no doubt 100 yards of what was happening, Jesus stops for. And Jesus looks at him and they connect, and Jesus says, hey, well, shoot, I don't want to tell you what he says. I'm going to read you what he says. This is better. Verse 5, when Jesus reached that spot, he looked up and said to him, Zacchaeus, come down immediately. I must stay at your house today. Boom. You're thinking, well, I mean, that's great. You know, maybe Jesus was hungry. He needed a place to stay. No, let me tell you about what's happening. And so hospitality in the first century was huge, right? So like some of us have pretty good hospitality bones in us, right? My grandmother, she is so good at hospitality. She cooks these fried potatoes in this skillet. My goodness gracious, you know what I'm saying? You come over, there's a good chance you're getting a pie and some of them fried potatoes. You know what I'm saying? That's it. Well, some of us are great at hospitality. Hospitality in the first century was a step above what we do because it was a social status thing. People that came to your house, it not only was something for you to give to them, it also, their presence gave something to you. Like suddenly, because these were small towns, everyone knew where Jesus was going to stay. In fact, there was probably a committee when they found out that Jesus was coming. They were like, hey, let's put some stuff together and let's bid for who's going to keep Jesus at the house. Who's going to have dinner with Jesus? Probably all that commotion was happening. I tell you what, in his wildest dreams, Zacchaeus didn't think Jesus was going to look at him and say, I'm coming to your house. So you can imagine the murmuring that began to happen among folks as he made his decision. Verse 7 says, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. That's what it says. All the people saw this and began to mutter, he has gone to be the guest of a sinner. Not simply that he would spend time with him, but they would elevate the social status of one of the most hated men in the region, that he would honor him with this presence, this rabbi, at this sinner's house. You see, Jesus had a different set of steps, a different set of theology. For him, it wasn't behave, believe, belong. It was belong, believe, behave. He said, hey, the most important thing I need you to know is that you belong with me. You see, this is actually something that's a kind of a reoccurring thing that happens in the New Testament. Over and over again, the Apostle Paul is famous for it. He says, hey, you can't hold people who don't believe in Jesus to Jesus people's standards. They don't have any idea. They don't even believe in Jesus, so why would they do what he asked them to do? But we've lost that message somewhere. Jesus says, watch how I do. Watch. I will interact with them before they ever have any idea who I am. Not because I have an end goal in mind, but because God created them. God made them. Because God cares for them. And Jesus says, by the way, I'm God. Watch how I do it. If you want to model something, model what I do. Care for them regardless of whether or not they behave. Care for them regardless of whether or not they believe. This isn't a strings attached relationship at all. This is hey, this is what Jesus did. You know, Jesus didn't say, hey, Zacchaeus, I'd like for you to come on down. I would like for you to get right with all these people you've wronged. I would like for you to believe in me. I would like for salvation to come to your house. I would like for all these things. And if you're willing to do all those things, we can go to your house and talk. Jesus never said that. He said, let's go have dinner. He left out the rest. It's a given. Jesus has a desire for every single one of us to be just like him. I don't think there's a person on the planet that interacts with another Christian, right? Okay, let's take that back. There's probably people on the planet, like in unreached places. People here in the United States, incredibly rare to find someone who has a conversation with someone about Jesus who doesn't in their mind think, you want me to be like Jesus. Like, that's the whole point. Hey, we should be like Jesus. We say belong, believe, behave, no matter what you believe. And maybe there's gaffes. What? No matter what they believe? You can belong if you don't? Yes. Yeah. 100%. If you're here today and you do not believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of the living God, you still belong. And if there's anyone in our church that tries to tell you otherwise, man, will you come find me? Take a picture of them and then come find me. You know, we need to have a conversation. No matter what you've done, you might have a rap sheet from here to the moon. No matter how you feel. I don't care whether you're a Democrat or Republican. Independent. No matter how you feel about things, you still belong. No matter what you are currently participating in, no matter what you did last night or Friday night or early Saturday morning before the sun came up, you still belong. The question is, why? Why did Jesus choose to do ministry that way? The Bible seems to envision a life of following Jesus alongside others. And we all start in different places. We all start in different places. You know, there are people in this room, in our audience, there are 5 people that are a part of our church. They have Bible college degrees. 3 that have gone to seminary, that are just normal people just like you that are a part of our church, don't work at churches anymore. And then we have people in this room today that have been baptized in the last 90 days. You see the difference? But no matter what, no matter where you're at in between, you belong. We have different beliefs. We're guilty of different mistakes. We feel differently about things. We currently struggle with different things. Again, this has to be something we're okay with because Jesus was. And Jesus wants us to be alongside one another as we walk through life. Do you know that there's 54 times in the New Testament when we are told to do something to or for someone else? 54 times. Someone specifically says, hey, here's the deal. I want you to do something specific for someone else. I'll give you a small list. Love one another. Pray for one another. Bear one another's burdens. Confess your faults to one another. Forgive one another. Be kind to one another. Encourage one another. Live in harmony with one another. All those things. The Bible is full of this is how you interact with other people. I guess one of the questions I want to ask this morning is, are you interested in having people like that in your life? People who take the time to look at this list and say, you know what? That's how I should live my life. Do you want those kind of people in and around you? I would imagine most folks would say, yeah, I could actually use someone else in my life that would encourage me. I could actually use someone else in my life that would actually pray for me when I ask for prayer. Or maybe even just say, you know what, I'm going to pray for you even when you don't ask it. I would imagine most folks say, yeah, I could use more people that would be kind to me. especially in this season of life. Man, who wouldn't want to have someone else in their life that would share your burdens with you? So the question then becomes, if we truly want that, if that's truly what we desire, who is this one another? Who is it? It's the people in your life. It's the friends you begin to accumulate. I say this with a disclaimer, you have to be careful. Because not everybody thinks this is a good way to live. And most people think this because they don't even know that that's actually what we're supposed to be doing. They don't have the belief yet, right? You do have to be careful. I mean, we do talk to kids a lot about this, right? I say, take a picture of your friends and I'll show you a window into your future. We talk to our children about this, especially if they're in middle school and high school. We're like, hey, here are the things you avoid, you know? When I talk to my daughter, I say, anyone who looks like a boy, go the other way. Anybody. God just doesn't like those people. Proverbs 13:20 says, walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. It says, surround yourself with wise people. Stop hanging out with those foolish folks, because harm will come to you. Now, I get it. You're thinking, whoa. Hold on, now you're a hypocrite. Well, I am. I'll tell you, I'm like lead hypocrite here. Lead pastor / lead hypocrite. I got you. You say, but I thought everyone belonged here. But now you're telling us not to hang out with everybody that could belong here. Yeah, 100%. Everyone belongs at church. Everybody does. But everyone doesn't belong in your social life. I'll give you a really great example. A couple weeks ago, I was at the prison here just locally talking with a guy. And I asked him, he's been in and out of prison a couple times. And I said, hey, why did you get back in this? He said, because when I got out last time, I didn't change a thing. I went back to the same people, to the same houses. I went back to the same folks. I made no changes. And so I ended up right where I ended up last time. Yeah, there are moments in your life where you've got to get a little isolationist, where you can kind of be repaired and you can be built up and equipped to go back into the lives of others. There is a time of preparation that needs to happen. That doesn't mean those people can't come to church, you can't invite them. It just means on Friday evenings, you're probably not ready to be the person that's pulling them out of the life that they're in. It means you got to take a little bit of break so that God can change you, and then he will send you back in. Man, show me a drug dealer that's given his life to Jesus and hasn't had a conversation with people that deal drugs now. I tell you, he probably doesn't know Jesus. Because when God has pulled you out of something, there is a burden that he puts in you to go back to those places when you are ready and equipped and begin saying, come on with me. I'll show you a new way to live. You can do it. I'm an example. But it's not immediate. It's not right now. They belong here. They might not belong in your life at the moment. And that's a difficult thing to say. Yeah, you're like, but Jesus did. Yeah, Jesus was God. The end of the story, Jesus, remember, he walks past. He's like, oh, what a lovely sycamore fig tree. Oh, there's a man in it. Zacchaeus, I know your name. How about that? I'm coming to your house. Will you please come down? I hope you have lamb chops ready. I don't know if he eats lamb chops. I don't know. Jesus is a lamb? I don't know. Probably not. Okay. It wasn't that funny. The end of the story, let me tell you what happens. But Zacchaeus stood up and said to the Lord, look, Lord, here and now I give half my possessions to the poor. And if I've cheated anybody out of anything, I'll pay back 4 times the amount. That's what happens when Jesus walks into someone's lost life. That doesn't happen when you walk into their life. You can be a great representation of Jesus, but we're not going to fix people in an afternoon. Jesus spit in mud and put it on people's eyes and they saw. That's not something we see here all the time. Honestly, I've never seen it. It takes time to change people's hearts. It takes time to change people's lives, but it's worth it. So the question becomes, what should we actually do? If we have some decent theology where we say, hey, it's not behave, believe, belong, but we're going to flip that where you can belong before you believe and after you believe, then we have this expectation that, hey, you start to follow Jesus, that behavior begins to come in line with who Jesus is. If we have that correct theology, and that's what Jesus kind of shows us, illustrates, demonstrates for us, it's backed up by the rest of the New Testament writers. Once we get there, then the question is practically, what then do we do? Well, I'll tell you this. It just so happens that we're in a series called Launch. And next week, we launch groups. And these groups should be mixed between people who do not believe and do not behave, but know they'll belong, and people who belong, believe, and behave. That's what we mix groups for. That's where you're at. If you're sitting there thinking, I don't know if I can do a foundation group, we call them foundation groups. You might know them as small groups, maybe heard of them that way. I don't know if I can do that because I don't know enough. Good. That's great. Jesus, we don't need a bunch of Jesusers in small groups. You know? We're doing groups to do work, not to like try each other's cake recipes, you know? Which is good. I like cake. Cheesecake, to be honest. Here's the truth. Small groups connect you to people, and hopefully they're different people. Small groups connect you to people, hopefully they're different people. Here's the truth. A small group can make a big difference. You see, we talk about here at Foundation, there's a difference between baby steps and big boy steps. And we believe that everyone, no matter where they're at, started at some point with baby steps. And so if you can picture kind of a kid, maybe it was your kid, maybe your grandkid, maybe your friend's kid, you've probably seen a toddler begin to go from like crawling on his knees and all those kind of things to the first steps that he makes, right? And so this is the best biblical picture that I've been able to come up with you giving your life to Jesus. And so when you begin to give your life to Jesus, right, it's not like you revert to being a baby or anything, but your spiritual life, it's like learning to walk all over again. And so what happens when there's a baby that's learning to walk? They fall down a lot, don't they? Now here's the thing. Good parents expect their kid to fall down a lot while they're learning to walk. Let's change the word. Good Christians, good followers of Jesus should expect their friends to fall down a lot when they're learning to walk. There should not be an expectation that you run the 40-yard dash in 4.2 seconds on the first day that you're beginning to walk. It takes time. But also think about it. A parent that wants his kid to walk, what do they do? A lot of times, mommy or daddy or grandmother or granddad or auntie or whatever you want to call, they get out in front of them, they put their hands out, and they're like, hey, this is where you're supposed to be coming. Come on, you can do it. Right? And the baby's reaching, right? They're like, oh, come on, I actually don't want to take a step, but if you would step towards me, that would be great. You're like, no, you got it. And you get just right there at the fingertip, right where you're almost touching, and you're like, oh, just a little bit more, right? And you take just a small step back, and before you know it, they're walking. And then they realize they're walking and they fall down. You know? And then what do? You kick the baby? No, you don't kick the baby. You don't kick the baby. You don't. There's no baby kicking here. If you see someone kicking a baby, take a pic. Don't call 911. Okay? That's it. No. When they fall down, you actually go to them. You don't sit over here and say, well, if you'd have just taken a couple steps more, this wouldn't be an issue. No, you go back to them, and you say, hey, let me help you up. You're okay. You're all right. I was expecting this. And you help them up, and they begin to walk. Anyone ever seen a baby like 6 months into learning to walk? They're like, all right, this is dumb. I'm going back to crawling. The same way in your life with Christ. The same way. You might get 6 months in and say, man, I just like life better. It happens. Our groups are a place where you can take baby steps or big boy steps.